Shana Tova. Tradition teaches us that today is the anniversary of the sixth day of creation. The first man and woman were created on this day, created as equals. And then they lived in that Garden of Eden, and then they ate that piece of fruit from the tree of knowledge, and then God punished them. And we'd like to think that the day actually ended. But it did not. Because we're in the midst of that day. Rosh Hashanah is that moment where we think about our creation. We think about the things we have done right and the things we have done wrong, and how to make this world a better place. Each Rosh Hashanah, we stand up and we say, I can be better. So I ask each and every one of you to think about this year and to use this day to begin your days of awe. And to remember that sixth day will never be complete until we can say, God's creations are ki tov, that they are good. That is our job, to make this world better. And we can do it. And the first way we can do it is by wishing, one another, L'shana tova tikatevu. May this be a year for a good inscription. So take a moment in your chat windows and say, Happy New Year to one another. So this morning, we're actually not going to begin our service in song. We're going to begin our service with the blast of the shofar. And we've taken the three sections of our shofar service, and we've broken them up, and we've put one at the beginning, one in the middle, and one at the end. So you'll have three chances to hear that mournful cry. We are taught when the shofar sounds 100 times, it blows open the gates of heaven. And when the shofar sounds 100 times, it forms a bridge between heaven and earth. And we can enter heaven on that bridge. And when the shofar blows 100 times, it cracks the shell of our awareness wide open. And suddenly, we find ourselves in a better place. When the shofar blows 100 times, we hear the voice of all that is holy. Today, over the course of this service, you will hear 100 shofar blasts. May it open your heart. May you hear all that is holy. May you become open to new experiences and to helping others every way and any way you can. The first section of our shofar calls is called Malchuyot, which means kingdom. And traditionally it refers to God's kingdom and how we're calling out to God in the heavens. We need to remember that God came from the heavens according to our tradition and walked with Adam, Noah, Abraham, and so many others. But what does it mean to have a king come and join us? What does it mean to walk with holiness? Because we don't need to think necessarily that there's an outside force working upon us. Perhaps we need to realize that holiness is all around us, and then we can just reach out and grasp it. So as the shofar is blown for the first series of calls, consider the fact that all of humanity lives in one kingdom, and that when we come together to do good, that is what God truly is. Let us be good to this kingdom we call earth, and let us make it as holy as the heavens. And now the Cantor will do the shofar blessings. Cantor.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לשמוע קול שופר. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Tekiah! Shevarim Trua! Tekiah! After the conclusion of each set of calls, our choir sings a reshet, a translation of a reshet. May what our lips express be pleasing in your presence, God exalted and sublime. You who discern, listen, watch, and hearken to our shofar blast, may you receive with mercy and favor this arrangement of our tradition's declaration of your rule, our memories, and the shofar's call. A reshet.
הרשת שפתנו ירב לפניך אל רם ונישא הרשת שפתנו ירב לפניך אל רם ונישא מבין ומאזין מביט ומקשיב לכל תקיעתנו ותקבל ברחמים וברצון סדר מלכויותינו.
We continue with the Ma Tovu on page 110, the Ma Tovu.
Ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, vani berol chastecha, avo betecha, eshtacha ve'elchecha kodshecha be'yiratecha. Ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Adonai ahavti me'on betecha umekon mishkan kevodecha mishkan kevodecha ve'ani eshtachaveh ve'ekra evrecha lifnei Adonai osi ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Vani tefilati lecha, Adonai et ratzon, Elohim berov hastecha, Elohim berov hastecha, Haneni be'emet yishecha. Ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael.
It is good to give thanks. The question arises, why? Does God need our praise? No. But we need to do it anyway. To awaken, to wonder, to reach out towards holiness, to reach out towards godliness. It is good to give thanks. For through thanksgiving comes awakening. And each of us needs to be awoken, especially during these difficult days when each day blends into the next. Let us awake and see how today is special and how every day is special. Let us rise for the Amidah. We are on page 166.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו אלוהי אברהם אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב אלוהי שרה אלוהי רבקה אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא אל עליון גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה.
Remember us for life. O God, who treasures life, sanctify us and inscribe us in the book of life for your sake, God of life.
זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים למענך. אלוהים חיים למענך, למענך, למענך אלוהים, למענך, למענך אלוהים חיים, למענך, למענך, למענך אלוהים, למענך, למענך אלוהים חיים.
The Unatana Tokef speaks to Jews of every generation. It reminds us that we need to be ourselves. But not just any version of ourselves, we need to be the best version of ourselves. As Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan taught, well, we should each try to become more human. And that journey is called God. And there's a story, a Hasidic story, that speaks about this idea. It's about Rabbi Zusia. And we're taught that Rabbi Zusia, when he died, they're not going to ask him, why were you not more like Moses? But why were you not more like yourself? The Unatana Tokef.
קדושת היום, כי הוא נורא ואיום, ובו תינשא מלכותיך, וייכון בחסד כיסא ותשב עליו באמת. אמת, כי אתה הוא דיין ומוכיח ויודע ועד, וחוטב וחותם וסופר ומונה, ותזכור כל הנשכחות, ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות, ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות, ומאליו שבטו כן תעביר ותספור ותמנה ותפקוד נפש כל חי ותחתוך קצבו לכל בריאה ותכתוב את גזר דינם.
Please join me on page 178. Let us read together. On Rosh Hashanah, this is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. How many will pass away from this world? How many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age? Who will be taken before their time? Who by fire and who by water? Who by war and who by beast? Who by famine and who by drought? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who by strangling and who by stoning? Who will rest and who will wander? Who will be tranquil and who will be troubled? Who will be calm and who tormented? Who will live in poverty and who in prosperity? Who will be humbled and who exalted? Uteshuvah, utefillah, usadaka. But through return to the righteous path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of this decree.
בראש השנה יכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. בראש השנה יכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. בראש השנה יכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. כמה יעברון, וכמה יבראון. בראש השנה יכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. בראש השנה יכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. מי יחיה ומי ימות, מי וקיצור ומי לא וקיצור, מי ואש ומי ומים, מי וחרב ומי וחיה, מי ורב ומי וצמא, מי ורש ומי ומגפה, מי וחניקה, בראש השנה יכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יכתבון, בראש השנה יכתבון, וביום צום כיפור יכתבון. מי אני ומי ישיר, מי יושפל ומי ירום, ותשובה תפילה וצדקה מעבירים, מעבירים את רוע הגזירה.
I'm in the middle of page 180. You are everything that we praise you for. Slow to anger, quick to forgive. You do not wish the death of sinners, but urge them to return from their ways and live. Until the day of death, you wait for them. You accept them at once if they return. Since you created us, you know our impulses. We are but flesh and blood. We turn to page 184 for the Kiddushah. Please rise.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך. וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. אדיר, אדירנו, אדוני, אדוננו, מה אדיר שמך בכל הארץ. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו, ורחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני, קדוש, 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 אלוהייך ציון, לדור ודור. הללויה, 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 הללויה,
We shall teach your greatness, Lador Vador, from generation to generation, and to the end of time we will affirm your holiness. Our God, your praise shall ever be on our lips. For your power is boundless, sovereign, and holy.
If you'd like to join me, we're in the voice packet for the shofar service, Zichronot. The second section refers to memories, and in traditional Judaism reminds us that God remembers our every deed. Whether one believes in an external God that lives in the heavens, a God that lives in every person's heart advising on right and wrong, or a God that is only present through the actions we take in this world, we need to remember that our every act has repercussions, either for good or bad. We need to remember that our actions affect not only us, but those all around us. Together, as the shofar is blown for the second series of calls, reflect upon an act you took this past year that will be remembered by others. And now the shofar calls.
Tekiah! Shevarim Trua! Tekiah! Tekiah! Shevarim! Tekiah! Tekiah! Trua! Tekiah! And we all say, Yasher Koach!
And now a reshet.
הרשת שפתנו ירף לפניך אל רם ונישא הרשת שפתנו ירף לפניך אל רם ונישא מבין ומאזין מביט ומקשיב לכל תקייתנו ותקבל ברחמים וברצון סדר זיכרונותינו.
There once was a king, and this king had two servants who he truly loved. And before he left on a long journey, he gave them each, two gifts, a measure of wheat and a bundle of flax. And one servant took that flax and wove it into clothing, and took that wheat and turned it into flour and then a loaf of bread. And the other servant, what did he do? Nothing. And then the king returned from his long trip, and he said, "Bring to me, show me what you have done with my gifts." And that one servant, he saw that he had taken the gifts and done something with them, something special, clothing and food. But the other servant had done nothing. Well, these gifts are a metaphor for our Torah. We are given the Torah. We're giving it stories and its words, and we are supposed to use them. And if we don't use them, we have not done what we are supposed to do as a Jewish community. So this year, I know it is difficult, but we must take whatever flax we are given. We must take whatever wheat we are given and truly create something special, even during a pandemic. We now transition into Avinu Malkeinu, our parent, our sovereign. And we think about how this is a metaphor of an image we understand, a parent, a leader. You see, we want an external voice to forgive us, but that voice of forgiveness resides in each one of us, inside of our hearts. As a community, we can be heard. As a community, we can fight against war and famine and sickness. We can end oppression. Because inside each one of our hearts is that voice of forgiveness telling us to do good, to do better, to be better. So together we can write a book of life, where life is respected, where the world is a better place for all. And now, Sam Klein, our religious school director and former intern, would join me in reading the Avinu Malkeinu. We are on page 223. Avinu Malkeinu Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, hear our voice.
Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you.
Avinu Malkeinu Chamol Aleinu Ve'al Olaleinu Vitapenu. Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our families.
Avinu Malkeinu Kalei Dever V'cherev V'ra'av Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger.
Avinu Malkeinu Kalei Kol Tsar Umastin Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror.
Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'sefer Chaim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived.
Avinu Malkeinu Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, renew us for a good new year.
Avinu Malkeinu Chonenu Va'anenu Ki ein banu ma'asim asei imanu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshienu.
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu, Ve'al Olaleinu, Vitapenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Kalei Dever V'cherev
Today's Torah portion is the Akedah, and we read the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, every Rosh Hashanah. And it is a terrible and frightening story. It speaks about Abraham getting a command from God to take his son, his favorite son, to take him to the top of Mount Moriah and sacrifice him. But why wouldn't Abraham listen? Since God said to Abraham those famous words, Lech lecha, go and I will show you a land that will one day be yours, Abraham has been listening to God. And he has gotten so much from listening. He's gotten wealth. He's gotten new land. And his herds, well, they've also increased. So what does he do? He takes his son on a 3-day journey, and then he marches his son up a mountain. And we're taught that in one hand Abraham carried, well, the knife for sacrificing, and in the other a ball of fire. And he binds him, well, to an altar. And he's about to kill him when an angel stops him. And the angel says, stop, you have proven your faith. And then he walks down the hill, knowing that he has fulfilled God's commandment. The trouble with this story lies in the line, Vayeshev Avraham be'Beersheva. And Abraham dwelt in Beersheba, because after this terrible incident, what happens? Abraham, he goes into retirement. He buys himself a nice little condo in Beersheba. But Sarah is not with him. And his son Isaac is not with him. So let's back up a moment. In this story, he and Isaac, well, they come down this hill, but not together. And they never speak again. And they're never present in the same space again until Isaac comes to bury his father many years later. And where is Sarah? Well, tradition tells us that Sarah died because she heard that Abraham had actually completed this act. And so what happens? Well, she dies of a broken heart, never to be with Abraham again. Yes, you can go dwell in Beersheba. You can go and you can set up a new existence. But you haven't repaired the past. And the trouble with this story is that Abraham and Isaac never talk. They never come together again. They never reflect on this terrible action. Yes, Abraham did something terrible to his son. But the biggest mistake was that he never said, I am sorry. And probably a bigger mistake is they didn't go into the biblical version of therapy together. They had some issues they needed to work out and to work through. So often we interpret this story as a statement against human sacrifice and how it teaches us don't sacrifice other human beings. But that's exactly what Abraham did. He sacrificed his relationship with his son. He sacrificed his relationship with his wife. Sacrifices abound in this story. But there is a lesson. The lesson is that no matter what action you are about to take, even if you don't complete it, you can still destroy a relationship. You can still hurt people that you love. So during this high holiday season, we need to think about those relationships that we've left dangling, that we've walked away from, where we've ended conversations without healing. This high holiday season, we need to approach those who we have really damaged and say, I am sorry. Let us see if we can get back to a place of communication and of love. Akedah. It's called the binding of Isaac. And perhaps when we have broken relationships, we all find ourselves bound, well, to emotional insecurities, bound to desperation. We need to unbind ourselves and to move forward. We'll find the Akedah on page 240. Today we're doing something different than we normally do. Often we invite everyone up onto our bima for aliyot. We are big on that group aliyah idea. Obviously we cannot do that this year. So we've asked congregants to tape themselves and to do the aliyahs, to say the blessings before and after the reading of a few verses of Torah. So now, the first blessing.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach. Baruch Adonai HaMorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Vayehi achar havarim ha'ele v'ha Elohim nisa et Avraham vayomer elav Avraham vayomer hineni vayomer kachna et pincha et yichidcha asher ahavta et Yitzhak V'lech lecha el eretz hamoria v'alehu sham le'olav al achar harahim asher amar elecha v'yashkem Avraham v'avoker v'yachavash et chamoro v'yikach et shnei na'arav ito v'yet Yitzhak b'no v'yavakav etzei lecha Vayakam vayelech al hamakom asher amar lo ha'Elohim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah v'emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach. Baruch Adonai HaMorach Baruch Adonai HaMorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Bayom hashlishi vayisa Avraham et einav vayaret hamakom merachok vayomer Avraham el ne'arav shvu lachem po im hachamor vani v'hana'ar ne'elcha ad ko v'nishtachaveh v'nashuva alechem vayikach Avraham et asei ha'olah vayasem al Yitzhak beno vayikach b'yado et ha'esh v'et hamachelet v'yelchu shnehem yakdav vayomer Yitzhak el Avraham aviv vayomer avi vayomer hineni v'ni vayomer hine ha'esh v'ha'etzim vayeh ha'aseh le'olah yomer Avraham Elohim yireh lo haseh le'olah beni vayalchu shnehem yakdav.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet vayhei olam natal v'toheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach. Baruch Adonai HaMorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
V'yavo el hamakom asher amar lo ha'Elohim vayiven sham Avraham et hamizbeach v'yaroch et ha'etzim V'ya'akod et Yitzchak beno, v'yisom oto al hamizbeach mima'al ha'etzim, v'yishlach Avraham et yodo, v'yikach et ha'machelet, lashkot et beno, v'yikra Elav malach Adonai min hashamayim, v'yomer Avraham, v'yomer hineni.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'hayei olam nata betokenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
And now, in front of an open Torah, I'd like to take a moment and let us, think about those who are ill of mind, body, and spirit. We need to say the Mishaberach prayer, not just for those people closest to us, but for this entire world. So please, take a moment and either in the chat window or out loud wherever you are praying, say the names of the people that you know that need a healing prayer. And then after you're done naming people you know, think about those people you haven't met, but that are suffering. Think about those people you hear about in the news, or those numbers we see in our newspapers, the numbers of the ill, the sick, the dying. And remember that every number represents a human being. Take a moment. Add the names. Mishaberach Avatenu V'Imotenu. May the God of our ancestors grant a refuah shlema, a complete and full healing to all those we named today and to all those we hold in our hearts. And together we say, Amen. And now the singing of Mishaberach.
מקור הברכה לאמותינו. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu, מקור הברכה לאבותינו. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say,
Baruch et Adonai Hamvarach, Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed, Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim, V'natan Lanu et Torato, Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Vayikra malach Adonai el Avraham shenit min hashamayim vayomer bi nishbati neum Adonai ki ya'an asher asita et hadavar hazeh velo chasachta et bincha et yechidecha. Ki ki varech avarechecha veharba arbe et zarcha kehochve hashamayim vechachol asher al svat hayam vayirash zarcha et sha'ar oivav vechitbarchu v'zarcha kol goyei haaretz ekev asher shamata bekoli vayashov Avraham el ne'arav vayakumu vayalchu yachdav el Beershava vayeshev Avraham Beershava.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah shemet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
I was tired and I was ready for Shabbat. I knew that after Friday night services ended, I had a couple days to catch my breath. Yes, a long weekend, even during a pandemic, is important. And given that we're already 2 months into the stay-at-home order, well, I just needed a break. I was planning time in my garden and time in my pool and time with my daughters and time with my wife, because even though we lived in the same house, we were all in our respective corners, taking classes and doing internships and fulfilling our professional responsibilities. Yep, I needed a few days where I could wrap my head around the prior 2 months and just be. But first, a service. It was April 28th, and a few days earlier had been Yom HaShoah. And as is our tradition at Kol Tikvah, we honor this day of memory during a nearby Shabbat service. As part of this year's service, congregants from the creative writing class were sharing poems and reflections focused on the Holocaust. Their words were beautiful. Everything proceeded so perfectly until I got to the mourner's Kaddish. As I spoke, an intruder scrawled over our digital prayer book, placing a swastika and a phrase that I won't repeat over the words of the Kaddish. Sam Klein, who was our intern at the time, notified me of the intrusion, and working together, we removed the intruder, but our efforts were not good enough. This intruder returned moments later, another expulsion, this time locking our meeting, kept this bigot out of our meeting permanently. So this bigot could not return with his swastika and his profanities. I then returned to introducing the Kaddish using these words. No matter how racist or anti-Semitic someone might be, they will never stop us from remembering those who passed. They will never stop us from saying the names of those whose names need to be said. They will never stop us. No, they will never stop us from fulfilling our commitments to Judaism. No matter how much I attempted to push the image out of my head, I couldn't. That swastika and those words scrawled across the digital prayer book, I kept seeing the 60 windows, the 100 congregants frozen in place as Sam and I attempted to remove the image and expel the anti-Semite. We had succeeded in our short-term goals, and we were able to finish the service with a sense of dignity. But those moments of hatred had repercussions that continued within our community for quite a while. From anger to fear, many emotions were felt by community members, both those present and those that heard about it later. The shock we felt was immense. And over the past months, I've thought a lot about the rise of anti-Semitism in this country. And I've shared my reflections and what I've learned with fellow rabbis so they can protect their communities. I know that anti-Semitism is quite real. My weekend went from one of planned relaxation to one of action. There were many partners involved in the aftermath. Congregants, my fellow clergy, the Federation, the Community Security Initiative, the police, neighboring religious institutions, and the Board of Rabbis. At the end of the day, the actions taken against us were considered a hate incident, not a hate crime. An incident. While disgusting, these actions were not illegal. I truly believe that if someone desecrates virtually, it should be treated as if the desecration happened physically. The law needs to be changed, but that That is a discussion for another day and another sermon. Recently, I chaired a Board of Rabbis gathering where experts from CSI, AJU, and the Anti-Defamation League shared their knowledge with rabbis from Reform, Reconstructionist, Conservative, and Orthodox communities. They confirmed what we already knew. The number of anti-Semitic incidents is increasing worldwide. But they also talked about the need to join with black and brown communities in their struggles. They spoke about the interconnectedness of all persecuted minorities. They talked about how we need to assist one another. And as they spoke, I began to struggle with the decision I made last year, back when George Floyd and Breonna Taylor were still alive, and Jacob Blake was not paralyzed. Back when protesters were not filling the streets and a virus had not sent us into isolation. You see, last year at Kol Nidre, I spoke about anti-Semitism. I spoke about how minority communities and their leadership were realizing they needed to help the Jewish community. And by supporting the Jewish community against bigotry, hate, and violence, they were actually, helping their own communities. I specifically referenced how more and more leaders in the black community were standing up for Jewish Americans. I did 5 drafts of that sermon. And if you look at draft 4 and draft 5, you'll see I made a major cut. And what was that cut? It was a section I wrote on racism and its relationship to anti-Semitism. Yep, I took it out. I decided that I needed to focus on what was happening to the Jewish community and how others were helping us. I decided not to speak about what we could and should be doing for others. I played it safe. And by playing it safe, I received a lot of kudos. A lot of kudos from a wide spectrum of congregants. Given all that has happened over the past 6 months, I made an error. I should have balanced what others were doing to support us with what we were doing and could be and should be doing for others. But I felt people wanted to hear about problems that were directly affecting them. Hence my focus. It makes sense if you understand how the human brain works. You see, we are designed to focus on our own problems and to the best of our ability avoid seeing the problems of others. It's the way we are wired. Literally, if you placed yourself into an fMRI machine, which images metabolic function, you'd see that the farther an issue resides from you, the less your brain wants to react to it. If you think about yourself on an fMRI machine, a certain part of your brain will light up like Times Square. And if you think about family members, it lights up a little bit less. And if you think about people with whom you have no connection, it will barely register on the scan. Yep, if you think about how anti-Semitism affects you, it lights up. But if you think about racism, probably a lot less so, unless you're a person of color. I admit it, it's hard for us to consider others when we have our own source, our own problems. Let's admit it, right now it's really hard to think beyond the security of our own families. But we're being affected by anti-Semitism. In late August, a Chabad in Delaware was set on fire and it was determined to be arson. And it was far from a major story. It was buried. So yes, maybe we should be thinking about anti-Semitism. But in order to slow or reverse anti-Semitic sentiment, we also need allies. And allyship goes in both directions. That means we need to fight racism in order for other minority groups to help us fight anti-Semitism. We need to see the similarity of our issues. And if you can't see the similarities, you don't understand the story of the Jewish people. We have been second-class citizens throughout this world for most of Jewish history. We have been abused. We have been murdered. We have been blamed. We have been the other. And so have the black and brown communities when they've lived here in the United States. In the past, I've spoken about the little a, big A anti-Semitism paradigm. Big A represents blatantly anti-Semitic acts. Little a represents microaggressions. Little a anti-Semites don't realize their actions are hurtful or perpetuate a stereotype. When your feelings are slighted, they say things like, "I was just joking. You know I like you. I wasn't talking about you in specific." Big A anti-Semites are actively degrading and violating Jews any way they can in a planned and deliberate manner. Big A and little a anti-Semitism are found on both the extreme left and right side of our political spectrum. So little a and big A, I borrowed these ideas from the concept of little r and big R racism. Small r racism is what happens whenever someone from one race hates or negatively stereotypes the members of another race. Anyone can be a small r racist. White people, black people, brown people can all be small r racists as long as they dislike another racial group. Big R racism, it is systemic and institutional. Only those with a significant power advantage over another group can be big R racist. In other words, minorities with no power cannot be big R racist because they have no institutional power. I'm sure most of you are thinking or whispering to one another or texting one another, I'm not a racist, big R or little r. Great, good for you. You're not a racist. You proclaim this honor to your family and friends over a glass of wine, or to your coworkers over a cup of coffee, or even during a Zoom meeting. But let me ask you, are you an anti-racist? Are you an anti-racist? If you're not a racist or an anti-racist, then you stand in the middle. And while you might say you're not racist, you're not getting involved, so you let bigotry flourish. Being neutral allows evil to take control. Do I need to remind you of the Germans and Poles who said, I didn't work in the camps. I didn't do anything to hurt anyone. Even as they saw Jews taken from their homes and shoved into cattle cars, even as they smelled the smoke from death camps. I can't count the number of times that I've spoken to this community or written an email or chatted directly with a congregant about social justice issues that are key elements of being a Reformed Jew. And so often the response is, Rabbi, I agree with you, but it's not that important to me. Agreeing with me is lovely. It makes me feel good. But thinking you can sit on the sidelines as the world finds itself in turmoil is not where you should be as a Jew or a human being. Doing nothing, standing in the middle, letting it be someone else's issue will leave us on the wrong side of history, especially when it comes to race relations. And author Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, he argues that we should return the word racist back to its proper usage. The term racist is not the equivalent of a slur, it is descriptive, and the only way to undo racism is to consistently identify and describe it and then dismantle it. Being an anti-racist is simple. If you're in the middle, take one small step in order to place yourself into the anti-racist camp. We can gently say to those around us who are using improper language, your words and actions need to be reflected upon. Each person is your brother or sister, and we need to see them as such and then to defend them just as we defend our own families. And if you want, you can do even more. You can find online petitions. You can find rallies to attend if you think they're safe. You can write your congresspeople. You can look around and say, what is needed today? Fighting racism is a step toward building alliances with minority groups who can share our battle against anti-Semitism. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. I swear that even with the passing of my father when I was only 6, I had a pretty good life. I played by the creek at the end of my street. I went blackberry picking in the woods nearby, well, even though my mom told me not to. I had free run of the neighborhood and would come home at sunset for dinner since no one at that time had a cell phone. I felt protected. But, as I look back, I realized I was living in a world surrounded by racism. I think about classmates that had Confederate flags adorning their cars and bedrooms. I think about all the Civil War statues that I passed walking through town with my friends. I think about, how I was taught that the Southern soldiers were gentlemen, while the Northern soldiers were marauding barbarians. I think about how my school district was integrated, but my high school placed 90% of the black students into the lower level classes. I think about my best friend in high school and how we decided it would be cool to use derogatory names for one another. And we tried it for about 1 minute and hated the way it felt because he was black and I was Jewish. And I'm sure he has never used the K word again, and I have never used the N word since that experience. I grew up in Louisville, living a protected, privileged life, even as my mother struggled to support us as a single parent. I didn't see the systemic racism that surrounded me. But today I do. As Reformed Jews, we need to follow the lead of our movement and speak out. Elie Wiesel's repeated trope, we need to get involved in every injustice. As he wrote in his Nobel Prize speech, we must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Is your neutrality helping the oppressor? Is your silence encouraging the tormentor? We need to fight racism if we desire minority groups to join us in our battle against anti-Semitism. Yes, we know that. More importantly, we need to fight racism because it's the right thing to do. When we actively fight racism, we are anti-racist. When we actively fight racism, we are creating a better world, not just for those of color, but for all of us. When we fight racism, we are anti-racist, which is what every Jew should be. Shana Tova. And now for our third and final set of shofar calls. And when you hear these calls, I want you to open up your hearts and your souls so that you are truly, truly entering these 10 days of repentance and reflection. We need to remember that, this last series of calls focuses on revelation, because we are taught that at Mount Sinai, the sound of shofars, awoke in every Israelite the morning that God gave them the 10 Commandments. These shofars led us to Mount Sinai, led us to revelation, led us to discover something new about the world, about holiness, and about ourselves. So as the shofar is blown for this third series of calls, allow that sound to open your heart to a new revelation about yourself, a revelation that will lead to change. And now the shofar calls. Tekiah! Shevarim Trua! Tekiah! Tekiah! Shevarim! Tekiah! Tekiah! Trua! Tekiah Gedolah!
Our thoughts turn now to loved ones whom death has taken from us in recent days, and those who died at this season in years past. Our hearts open as well to the wider circles of loss in our community and wherever grief touches the human family. We are not reciting names at this time, but if any of your loved ones should be mentioned, please add them in the chat window now to share them with the community. Zichronam livracha. May their memories be for a blessing this new year and always. When Rosh Hashanah falls, Shiva is annulled, but if you would like to recite the names of Shiva in your hearts, please feel free to do so. If you are observing Shloshim, I invite you to please rise now, the first 30 days of mourning. If you are observing the first year of mourning, I invite you to please rise now. If you are observing a Yortzeit, please rise now. And together we rise as one community to recite the Mourner's Kaddish found on page 292. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chaychon u'vyomechon u'v'chay dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shemei Rabba mevarach le'olam u'almei al-maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha brechu, le'ela u'le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru Amen. May the source of peace bestow peace on all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort to all who are bereaved. And together may we say, Amen.
And now for a final benediction. If you can keep your head when all about you, others are losing theirs and blaming it on you.
If you can trust yourself when all people doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too.
If you can wait and not be tired by waiting.
Or being lied about, don't deal in lies.
Or being hated, don't give way to hating.
Yours is the earth, and you'll be a righteous person.
Shabbat Shalom, Gamar Chatima Tova. May this be a good year filled with blessings.
Shana Tova.
Shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimroma. Shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom.
Shana Tova. I'm Rob Mullane, president of Kol Tikvah. Like you, my wife Terry and I have had our lives stood on end these past 6 months. And in the intervening time, we all have shifted, adjusted, and have done our very best, altering our lives to stay safe for ourselves, our children, parents, neighbors, and friends. And from the first days of this pandemic in March, your temple leaders have kept our congregation safe, providing love and joy as we have attended to the many needs of our community. Together, all of our efforts have enabled us as a community to weather these turbulent times and remain strong.
We want to wish all of you a very good new year, a much better year than the one that's just passed. We've been members of Kol Tikvah since its beginning, and we are loyal supporters.
We give to Kol Tikvah because of what Kol Tikvah gives to us.
Shortly after we moved in, we found our way to Kol Tikvah. And it was from that night on. It's like love at first sight. That's how we felt. We felt at home.
Then all of a sudden the lockdown started and we were all alone. I remember everyone was really scared. How long was this going to last? Are we safe? We were all sitting in our houses and we started getting messages from the clergy. We'll be holding an in-service, social distancing of course. They were going to put their heads together and we would come up with a plan.
We support Kol Tikvah for the community, for the friendship, for the support and the love that we feel every single day.
And community is something that every human actually needs, and it takes work for us to make that community so that we're supporting each other, and that's why we support Kol Tikvah.
We can be Kol Tikvah strong.
We are Kol Tikvah strong.
Kol Tikvah strong.
We are Kol Tikvah strong.
Yay!
Hi, I'm Cynthia Deculus. Why do I give to Kol Tikvah? Well, that's easy. These last 5 months have been so unsettled. I stare at a computer screen all day. Our summer vacation plans were canceled. Family members are falling ill. And the kids are making the best of online learning. But throughout all this turmoil, the one constant has been Kol Tikvah. I am in awe of how the clergy and the senior staff transformed our community to this virtual world. My son Julian, who many of you have known since he was born, is applying to college. And he's going to chant the 4th Aliyah on Yom Kippur. One of the college applications asks him to comment on a place he considers home. When he read that question aloud at the dinner table, his sister Danielle said, well, that's easy, Kol Tikvah. And we all agreed. It is going to be the easiest essay he writes because it will be from the heart.
My family loves Kol Tikvah, and we depend on it. And I'm guessing yours does too. So please, this high holy day season, give generously. Give whatever is meaningful to you and your family. Any amount means a lot to Kol Tikvah. Don't stand idly by, and don't expect others to participate. Now is the time. If ever we need to protect and build on this legacy, it is now. I encourage you to donate at a minimum of $360 so that your donation can be matched through the Kol Tikvah Donor Matching Fund. We need to keep Kol Tikvah strong, and we need to make it secure for ourselves, our kids, and our community. Please go to koltikvah.org and donate, and give generously now.
We are Kol Tikvah strong.
Hi, I'm Rabbi, Vice President of Communications.
This year you can celebrate the High Holy Days with your family living anywhere around the world. We invite you and your entire family to join us next week for Kol Nidre on Sunday, September 27th at 7 o'clock. The following day on Yom Kippur, we have a variety of services and programs available all day starting at 9:30 in the morning with our community Yom Kippur service. Please refer to our website, koltikvah.org, for more information. We're taking reservations now for temple members for Torah visits in our sanctuary, offering a private moment of reflection and meditation. These visits are taking place between now and Yom Kippur. Please go to our website again, koltikvah.org, to sign up today. We'll be collecting food for the West Valley Food Pantry. We need peanut butter, tuna, breakfast cereals, canned soups, canned vegetables, canned fruit, and also diapers sizes 2 to 6 years of age. The West Valley Food Pantry is an interfaith program that utilizes over 200 volunteers and services thousands of people. With a new report that 1 in 5 Angelino is food insecure, please help us. Thank you, thank you, thank you to Bridget Stokes, our Kol Tikvah Temple member, and her entire production crew, one I know very personally, for putting in countless, and I say countless hours producing all of our High Holy Day services. They are incredible, and we could not have done this without you. Please refer to the Voice booklet that all Temple members received in the goodie bag for a full list of everyone who made these High Holy Day possible. And if you know them, please thank them yourselves. Please visit our website for more information on all of our High Holy Day services and events, or to make your annual High Holy Day appeal. Shana Tova Umateka to everyone who has joined us today. Thank you.